England are one of the worst teams at Euro 2024, and that is rather baffling when you think about the depth of talent that is in their ranks. So today we're going to be taking a look at why England are so bad at Euro 2024. Gareth, this is for you. The first thing that I want to talk about isn't the starting 11. It's not who is playing and who is not. Don't worry, we'll get to that a little bit later. I want to talk about something that's far more, in my opinion, influential on a game of football, and that's some of the tactics. What I want to talk about is the press, or the lack of pressing, I suppose I should be mentioning in this particular start of the video, because England don't press. And it's really confusing to me because Saka can press, Bellingham can press, Foden, Rice, Trent, Trippier, Walker, all of these players have been in pressing sides with high energy, high tempo, really dynamic, fluid sides. Even Harry Kane, I think, could place himself into better positions to be able to press. Admittedly, he's the one question mark, but I still think he can do a little bit more when it comes to England's pressing game. But time after time again, this is the scenario that we saw. So you had Saka, Bellingham and Foden joining up with Harry Kane to try and press the ball, which is currently here. Of course, we have Denmark in their three at the back formation, their four-man midfield, one up ahead and two strikers. This did change throughout the game, but just bear with me. When England went forwards, Bellingham would trigger, Kane would trigger, Saka would come forwards, and they'd attempt to press. But time after time again, we saw this. And what I'm highlighting is the massive distance between the four attacking players and the rest of the team. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Declan Rice were so close to John Stones and Mark Gahey that it just made pressing nearly impossible. And this brings a certain quote into huge context, because Harry Kane said that he didn't realise how his side should press. He didn't realise. They didn't know. And that explains so much when watching the game. Because really what you should have is Trent pushing forwards, you should have Rice pushing onto one of the attacking midfielders, and then the entire back four just edging a little bit further forwards. This maintains pressure and it maintains dominance and keeps Denmark in their half. Instead, what we saw was what I mentioned earlier, a massive gap between the two central midfielders and the rest of the attacking squad, and it got to a point where it was just hilarious. The ball would just be played into one of the midfielders, or it would be recycled round through the keeper, and frankly the front four didn't have enough pace or dynamism. It's not their fault, but they would just be asked way too much. And if you're not going to press, just don't. And to be honest with you, that's where a lot of people are getting annoyed with England, because in some occasions they didn't press and then they just ended up dropping a whole lot deeper, and that became an entirely different problem. Because what you get then when you don't press is this. Denmark start dominating the ball. They have the ball here with their centre-back. Now, one player is pinned out here, one player is pinned out here. If England dropped back a great deal, and we know they dropped back, they stayed as compact as they possibly could. It's scary almost, but we'll get to that a little bit later. When Denmark push the ball forwards and it gets recycled, because Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham are so deep in trying to maintain a solid, rigid block, there is nobody here to try and get the ball forwards to. So it means that Denmark are able to just counter-press as much as they possibly want. Then they get those turnovers, then they get those recycles of possession, and it means that England stay in their own half. You're asking so much of the individuals here. You're asking way too much of Foden, way too much of Saka, way too much of Bellingham and Kane to just essentially beat three players and drive through the heart of an attack. It doesn't make any sense. The players that are at England's disposal are being limited to a ridiculous extent because of the lack of tactical pressing awareness that is in this side. This is a prime example of what I'm talking about. England have just won the ball back here. Kieran Trippier has the ball. Phil Foden is currently trying to make a run down to this side. And it's just baffling. Conor Gallagher is here. I don't exactly know why. But what Denmark realised was that the counter press for them was always on. So you had 1 closing, 2 closing, 3 closing. Because England didn't have an out ball, they must have realised this. They understood that Harry Kane wasn't being a good option to get out. They realised that Bellingham wasn't an option, and it meant that they were able to win the ball higher up the pitch. This play develops, Foden gets given the ball, and then he passes over to Declan Rice, who doesn't have an option. Look at the amount of Denmark players that are in this position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Denmark players pressing the ball, and what infuriates me to a massive extent is there is no movement. Phil Foden is currently moving with the ball. Yes, we know this. He's going to pass to Declan Rice. There is no movement here. There is no movement here. There's no movement here. It's just incredible. The play moves on. Declan Rice has the ball and he's forced to do a one-touch because he's currently being closed down by 2 Denmark players. Now, this is an extremely risky pass, but there are no options. There's no energy. There's no passing. He tries to pass to Bellingham, he fails the pass. It's incredibly risky to begin with, and Denmark end up getting a turnover. Bellingham fails to get that, and Denmark are once again on the attack. Bit of head tennis happens, and Declan Rice gets the ball. Then, again, what do we see? We see counter-pressing. This is something that Denmark seriously utilised and seriously realised. 4 players driving onto one specific slot, but once more, there are no players looking for options. I'm not seeing a Kyle Walker going forwards. I'm not seeing a Bukayo Saka coming close. It's not to blame these players. I think they've been instructed to do this, and it's just time after time again, a lack of either it's leadership, either it's just dynamism, whether it's some kind of impotence within the game. Somebody needs to take accountability. The next thing that I want to discuss is England's lack of attack and their lack of dynamism going forwards. Now, you could point that at a lack of progression from the midfield with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Declan Rice, but if I'm honest, it's to do with everything. It's Harry Kane dropping a little bit too deep, it's down to Bellingham not being able to get on the ball as much, it's Phil Foden not really occupying the left-hand side, but I do think that a massive problem is the lack of a balance in midfield between Trent and Declan Rice. Trent is in there to be the ball progressor, but his lack of movement in and around the centre midfield area to be able to drop back and pick up a ball, to be able to recycle it, is really damaging the way that England go forwards. And that's not a Trent problem, it's a tempo problem. It's just not being able to have the tempo to the game that England require to be able to move the ball as quickly as they need to. And it's having a massive knock-on effect in the way that they play and how dynamic they are in the final thirds. For example, take a look at this. This is a statistic or a diagram that shows the amount of passes in the final third between England and Denmark. England are here, Denmark are here. Now, what do you notice? England are in blue, Denmark are in red. What do you notice? England's passing into the box is nearly non-existent. Look at the amount of passes into the box that Denmark have. Not to mention the fact that Denmark recycle the ball far better than England do. And that tells me that there's a massive, massive problem with both passing, but also the intensity of the passing. If Denmark are willing to recycle the ball as quickly as they want to, they can get passes into the box that little bit easier. The tempo is just non-existent for England, and it's a massive, massive problem. The next thing I want to talk about is Phil Foden. Because of the amount that Phil Foden drifts in field, it just leaves England's left-hand side completely vacant. Kieran Trippier does not want to enter this space, and I don't really blame him. He's not left-footed, and it's not comfortable for him to receive the ball on his left foot to then try to whip in across. It just doesn't work, and if he tries to whip in across, it's more than likely not going to work. He's going to want to come back onto his right foot, and that is then going to allow the Denmark players, or whoever is defending, to be able to double up on him a little bit easier. You're then going to need the rotation from Foden, and it just all becomes a little bit of a mess. Take a look at this as well, because this is the attacking, essentially, heat map of England against Denmark. Now, the darker the area, the lack of occupying of space that England have in that particular position. The lighter the area, the more positions that were taken up. So, we can see that England really like attacking down their right-hand side. Bukayo Saka, you've got Kyle Walker going forwards. England do not use their left-hand side. They just don't use it. It's not a position. Just not completely vacant. And this is a massive, massive issue, because what it does is it makes England extremely one-dimensional. If you're Denmark, you know that you're going to be able to need to fill players to be able to fill this void. Because if you do, you can defend England's right-hand attack, Denmark's left-hand side, that little bit better. You know that you don't need to fill this area, because even if there isn't enough defensive players for Denmark, they know that England aren't going to attack that side. Because Phil Foden is drifting infield continuously, we know that Kieran Trippier doesn't want to go forwards, and it makes for incredibly difficult attacks. I'm not surprised that England aren't getting balls into the box. I'm not surprised that they're unable to really find any kind of attacking third momentum, because they are pigeonholing themselves into one particular area. It's crazy. And again, like I said, this is down to the lack of balance within the England setup, within the England side. Phil Foden wants to come in field. Jude Bellingham wants to come in field. Kane wants to come to the ball. Bukayo Saka is the only player that's keeping width. Kieran Trippier doesn't even want to enter this space. So it makes England extremely predictable. Finally, let's talk about the personnel, because I've heard some crazy things over the last 24 hours. Trent Alexander-Arnold apparently can't play football. Phil Foden shouldn't be in the England squad because he can't play on the left-hand side. I've heard that Harry Kane shouldn't be a striker for England. I've heard that Declan Rice apparently isn't a good midfielder. Now, all of these things are just desperate claims to try and explain what's wrong with England. And that's what this video essentially is trying to fix. It's trying to help. And hopefully this video does help. The main problem with England are the tactics that Gareth Southgate is employing with this England squad. The personnel for me comes second. As long as you get your tactics correct, and as long as you get your patterns of play correct, the personnel should make all of that better. And if they don't, you know you can swap them out. But for me, the tactics from the get-go are not correct. Having two holding midfielders in front of the back four against a Denmark side that don't necessarily prioritise attack is incorrect for me. Having a left winger not play left wing and having a non-left-footed player not enter the left side of the pitch is not a good tactic for me. Focusing all of your play down the right-hand side is not a good tactic for me. Having Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham essentially have free roles in the centre of the park when you don't dominate the ball is a poor tactic for me. And then you talk about the tempo. The lack of a pace of passing between the back four means that England will struggle to break through the lines. Trent Alexander-Arnold is being used as a massive scapegoat right now because England do not have enough tactical awareness to be able to progress the ball forwards in a calm manner. And when we think about the best passes that Trent has played, when we think about the best solutions that he's got, it's with runners in front of him. And Bukayo Saka is the only player that's going to be running. The only one. Harry Kane will not run in beyond. Phil Foden will not run in beyond. Jude Bellingham might do it on occasion, but you can't rely on it because he's given a free role. How are you ever expected to get Trent to play those passes to open up space if nobody moves? It's simple. It's really, really simple, guys. And I can't believe that Gareth Southgate isn't finding this. It's almost like he's trying to just put a player that can play passes and expect them to miraculously appear. It doesn't make any sense. And then I see this and I nearly lost my mind, genuinely. Gareth Southgate claims England lack replacement for Calvin Phillips. Calvin Phillips has played 600 odd minutes. 600 odd minutes in football entirely in the last year. You've had years to prepare for this tournament, and you're telling me that your solution to the midfield problem in the last 4 years or 3 years was to find a replacement for Calvin Phillips, and that's what you've come up with. He admitted it's an experiment, he admitted that they're trying something new, and has essentially confirmed to me that he's completely out of his depth. Completely. Now, for me, like I've said, the personnel doesn't really make any difference if the tactics aren't there to back it up. You can put a Kobbie Mainoo in there, you can put an Adam Morton in there, you can do whatever you like, but unless Gareth Southgate changes the way that England want to go forwards and the way they want to play, giving a little bit more freedom to the attack, asking them to play a little bit faster, asking some players to drop deep while spinning in behind, a number of different tactics to try and open up space, it won't make a difference. I promise you, it will not change. Now, one thing you can do if you want an option is to move Trent to the right hand side if you want to, change him out for Walker, or even drop Trent entirely, move Bellingham a little bit deeper, move Foden in field and bring on an Anthony Gordon. But even then, if the tactics do not change, even then it won't make a difference, I promise. The personnel are not to blame is essentially what I'm saying. Gareth Southgate needs to change the tactics, and he needs to make England a more cohesive unit. And to do that, it needs to get them on the front foot a bit more, being high with their tempo, high with their passing, and then allow these players to express themselves. However, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. And that is a brief summary of what I believe is wrong with this current England side. But of course, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like the video, please consider subscribing and stay tuned for what I've got coming up next for the Euro 2024. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.